Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss Aquaman, starring Jason Momoa, Amber Heard, Willem Dafoe, Patrick Wilson, Tamora Morrison, Dolph Lundgren, and Nicole Kidman, and directed by James Wan. Now, I have a theory that this movie might be bad, but we'll see what happens when I get into it. But first, I gotta explain a couple of things about myself. I'm not a big Jason Momoa fan. I have seen him in a couple of movies, and he said something kind of disrespectful to Marvel and says, F Marvel, DC's better. So far, it hasn't worked out for me, except for maybe Wonder Woman. But let's just get right into this because I got a lot to talk about in here. I do like the opening underwater logos of Warner Brothers and the DC logo. I thought that was pretty cool. The thing is, the opening was fine at best, with Thomas Curry, played by Tamora Morrison, who I reviewed before in this movie, where he played Boba Fett's father named Jango Fett, finding Queen Atlanna, played by Nicole Kidman, at a stormy weather, and Thomas takes her to his lighthouse where he lives. The thing that bothered me was Atlanna wakes up and scares his poor doggy. Which, how cute is that dog? And I think he's pretty cute, to be honest. And the next thing you know, she eats a pet fish. My problem is, this is for a fish out of water romantic comedy at best. And she grows out of that for 2 minutes later in this movie. Atlanna and Thomas fall in love and has a baby of their own named Arthur. And this is going to be a problem with the movie throughout. When the action sequences start kicking in with the bang, like kaboom, which annoyed the hell out of me, and I had to write down how many times that happened. But and Atlanna has to go back to the ocean where she lives, and Arthur grows up without a mother, which is kind of like a Disney character. It doesn't make any sense. Then the next scene, we see Arthur as an 8-year-old getting bullied, and the bad CGI looking fish defend him, and I was like, big deal. It's just the bad CGI effect. We meet an adult Arthur, played by Jason Momoa, fighting in a submarine, and fights some terrorists, or pirates let's call them, and saves their lives. The people in the submarine I'm talking about, and fights off Manta. And that action was okay. I was okay with, because it wasn't sudden like it usually will be throughout the movie. And Manta manages to escape, but his father didn't, which was rather worthless, to be honest, of characters. Arthur meets with his father and has drinks with him and some tough-looking guys who I thought Arthur was going to beat up at first when I first saw this, but turns out they're fanboys of the Aquaman. And takes a photo of him, and it was hysterical. Hell, I even laughed at that moment of the movie. Queen Mira, played by the beautiful Amber Heard, finds Arthur and asks him to go back to his homeworld, Atlantis, to put an end to King Orm, played by a shouty Patrick Wilson. I mean, literally, he shouts throughout the entire stinking movie. Like, can you just not today? It's almost like Michael Shannon with Man of Steel, for example, who creates a war with creatures who I don't really know what they're called, don't want to be rude about it, don't want to be ruled by the Atlantis army, and Orm and King Nereus, played by Dolph Lundgren, and I saw him recently in Creed 2, asked for war, and Volko, played by Willem Dafoe, who's trained to live in the ocean when he was a kid, and reluctantly agrees to go, but like King Nereus has to be sure the sea creatures aren't doing anything wrong, and that, as a villain plot, was rather unreal for me. Atlantis looks beautiful, and the CGI on those sequences was great to look at. And how did James Wan make characters talk underwater is beyond amazing. I'll give it that. Mira and Arthur meet up with Volko, in a sunken ship underwater, and we get a fourth sudden attack. I had to count it this time for the second viewing. I did see this twice, by the way. That King Orm's men attack Arthur, and King Orm holds Arthur in chains and Arthur challenges King Orm and for the throne, and Arthur loses and almost dies, and Mira at the last minute saves Arthur. And I hear in the comic books, Arthur and Mira are married, but I'm not getting the impression they're in love, and that's my problem with these characters in this movie in general. Arthur and Mira go to a desert and find a piece of equipment, and Arthur and Mira go to Italy and has a fifth sudden attack. Oh, jeez. With Manta, and remember him? Wants revenge on Aquaman for killing his father, being called Black Manta, and have a fight while Mira is jumping with Aquaman. Well, I should say this: with Aquaman fighting Black Manta while Mira is jumping from building to building, and honestly, that sequence gave me a headache. Because that sequence was badly filmed and shoddy. I was really annoyed by the fact that an endless fight, Aquaman keeps beating up Manta. Then King Orm gets prepared for battle, and Nels Volko is going to betray him like his ex-wife and Queen Mira, and goes to war against the sea creatures. Was a bad choice. I'm going to just say that much. Arthur and Mira find a hidden world, with Arthur's mother Atlanta being banished for years and hiding from Atlantis, and Arthur tries to get the golden spear and fights against a sea creature and uses his power and words against it. And not only did he get the golden spear, but he gets an outfit that Aquaman he has in the comic books. And it looks good for him. It's a good look. I rather enjoyed that sequence, to be honest. The war between Atlantis and the sea creatures was not a sudden battle, thank God, since we were prepared for this whole movie. And I liked that it was set up and we saw it coming, and it was great. I mean, it's a great looking battle, but the fight between Aquaman and King Orm was a good fight. But thank God the heads didn't come off, because this is PG-13, and there was a moment when the submarine was almost cutting people's heads off, but I was worried while they were on the submarine fight. Aquaman does win, and King Orm says, "Kill me," and Atlanta barges in, and instead puts him in prison, and Aquaman is king, and Thomas goes by the deck as he's been doing for years and waits for Atlanta, and she finally returns, and that ending was fine at best. Then credits roll, but during the credits, there's a scene when some fishermen pick up Manta, and he asks in return the head of Aquaman, and that is honestly a sequel I don't want. But I'll explain in a minute. But there's nothing after the credits, and how do I know? I sat through them the first time, I'll just say that much. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 5.7 out of 10. This is a better DC movie than the others, except for Wonder Woman. This was, at best, fine. There's problems, sure, but I love the world of Atlantis, and a bunch of sun sequence did annoy me this whole movie. And I don't want a sequel, because there's a good chance it'll suck as the other movies, except for Wonder Woman. But give this a look at only once, and never look back ever again. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and then I think in a few months from now, Shazam comes out. Oh my god, that trailer makes me nervous. And I'm scared for that movie, to be honest. Because it's a joke. I don't know what the hell else to tell you. It looks like a joke. And until then, Justice League Unite!